You say that sunlight is so good for our skin, but is there a time of day that we should avoid sun exposure?
Yes, in fact, for many years I believed that staying out of the midday sun is
10 to 2?
10 to 2 would be an advantage. But I came to that conclusion because I lived in a very, very hot country, Cyprus, where you would melt away if you were in that in the sun at that time. So you wouldn't want to avoid a heat stroke. But in the more moderate countries, it's actually more beneficial to stay out during the midday period.
Really?
Yes, there's a new study came out of England, and they studied that in that part of Europe, and they found that you make the most vitamin D during the hours between 10 and 2 or 3. And then in the morning hours and in the afternoon hours, later afternoon, you're not making any significant amount of vitamin D. Now again, that doesn't apply to African countries or very hot countries where you still make a lot of vitamin D at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Because of the intensity of
because the intensity is so much more. So it depends on where you are. If you're in a northern state, then I would definitely say get the sun exposure between 10 and 2 or 3.
Okay. How about the ideal amount of time? Does it have to be 20 minutes or something like that?
Yes, 20 minutes is once you have a normal vitamin D level in the body, 20 minutes is sufficient to replenish it.
20 minutes is, okay.
Yes. For a white Caucasian person, for a black African person is about 4 times as much.
They need 4 times as...
3 times, 4 times, depends on how black the skin is. So there are some black people who have more fair skin than others. Same thing for Latin Americans and Indians or other Asian groups where they have olive type skin, and that is they require at least twice the exposure than white Caucasian. The more fair your skin is, the less you need. The more darker the skin is, the more sun exposure you need to make the right amount of vitamin D.
Okay, and how about the risk of getting not enough? I mean, is there a risk of just not getting enough?
There's a huge risk of not getting enough simply by being indoors, which depletes your vitamin D levels, simply by not getting enough UVB coming. You don't get any UVB coming in today's windows. In the old days, people had houses with tiny windows.
Okay.
So they were forced to stay outside. If they wanted to see anything, they had to go out.
Because they had small windows.
Yeah, and the windows, they were not there except for sleeping, really. And they spent a lot more time outside. And they were exposed to the elements. So they allowed their skin to sweat, which, with our air conditioning, we don't have that. And they allowed their skin to be cold. So to be cold, because that kept the immune system strong, having to constantly adjust to the changes in the temperatures. Whereas nowadays our immune systems are so lazy, they get the same temperature all year round.
So differences in temperature stimulate the immune system?
Yes, yes. The immune system constantly has to adjust to the environment, to the changes in the environment, to cold, heat, humidity, moisture, dryness, everything. And the seasonal changes. So you have a different, the immune system is functioning very differently in the springtime than it is in the autumn, fall time, and in a high summer period. So there are different parts of the body that change. Even the blood pressure changes constantly. You have a different blood pressure in fall than you have in springtime. So there are many changes that the immune system has to constantly adjust to. The environmental changes, the intensity of the light, which is different now in the middle of the summer than it is in January.
And that stimulates the immune system.
Yes, and a different color, the different, there are more than 4,000 rays that come off the sun, and they're constantly changing according to the seasons. And our body, and particularly the immune system, has to adapt itself to these different changes in the environment. So it's a very clever, incredibly complex
Yes, it is.
situation.
And so even you need to hydrate your skin by sweating, so it's not good to be in air conditioning all the time?
So if you never sweat, that means that part of the body will accumulate toxins eventually, and then it creates aging of the skin or a damage of the skin, and then it's saturated with certain toxins. You may develop psoriasis or eczema or other illnesses of what we call diseases, which are really the body trying to get rid of something. It partially damages the skin by doing so, but it's still better than keeping it inside, because that can lead to cancer. So when we blame something and say, I want relief, I want to stop this, we are stopping the body relieving itself of the poison it desperately tries to get rid of, because the other channels of elimination, like the liver or the kidneys or the large intestine, they are clogged up and they can no longer get rid of the poisons, so the skin has to take over.